Jay Ingle and Chris Hoskins of Jackson Kelly Law Firm in Lexington, Kentucky here joining us today. Jay, what are we going to speak about?
Well, with all the changes and introduction of HIWU and HISA, we want to bring some practical tips for horsemen and women on what you can do now to protect yourself, and then also how to handle it if HIWU shows up with a notice of violation.
So you guys are equine law experts. You specialize in that. What all does that entail?
Specifically here, we're talking about racing. We represent racetracks, we represent owners, we represent breeders. We even represent top-of-the-line sales companies. Here today, we want to focus, though, hone in on the trainer or the covered person and the new rules implemented by HISA.
So this is obviously a new era with the implementation of HISA and HIWU as it relates to equine law. Have you guys had any involvement with either of these programs, with HISA or HIWU at this point?
Yes, Chris and I both have. We actually just finished an arbitration in front of HIWU under the ADMC program for a trainer. We did that as part of the pro bono program where HISA came to us last year and asked if we would serve as counsel for certain trainers who meet certain thresholds. And we just now finished our first case and really got to kind of walk through the process as it works in real life, not just on paper.
Building on Jay's comment, these rules are completely different than any of the state racing commission rules. And a covered person cannot say this is how it used to be. There's no value there. So it's important that they understand the foundation of the rules moving forward.
So you guys have seen the differences from state racing commissions now to the new HISA and HIWU rules. But what did you learn about the process of dealing with HISA and HIWU as opposed to dealing with the state racing commission?
One, it is going to move quicker. Sometimes in the old days with the racing commission, you could kind of sit on your hands, let some time pass, hope it lost a little of its luster. These move pretty quick, intentionally, which means you also have some quick deadlines and have to act quicker. There's also some pretty key themes we've seen in what types of responses and what types of approaches are working and what types aren't.
Anything specific with those themes that are coming out of the rulings?
There's an importance of having some policies and procedures in place. You'll see this frequently in opinions, and it's, what sort of signage do you have up? That may be a sign saying, wash your hands, don't urinate. It's as simple as that. Also, policies, written policies in place. And just as important as getting a policy in place is to implement that and to follow it. The arbitrators in these proceedings are looking at that in some circumstances as a mitigating factor.
So there may be a lot of horsemen and women out there who are not familiar with instituting these policies and procedures. Again, it's new territory with that. Do you have any specific recommendations to help them protect themselves, but also to educate their staff to make sure that they're in compliance as well?
What Chris hit on, and even in your question, Jesse, it's one, have the policies, don't urinate in the stalls, no caffeinated beverages in the barn area, wash your hands every time before you touch a horse's nose or mouth, wash your hands before and after providing medications, those types of things. A lot of things that every trainer does, but you don't have them on paper. And that's what's making a huge difference in these proceedings. If you look, Phil Schoenthal's is a great example. If you read about his experience and his comments, he said that made all the difference. When HIWU came in and he could show them, not just tell them, but had a piece of paper that said, here's the sign I had up, here's the policies, here's where I sat down with all my staff and walked through these and trained them. It was on this day at this time. That's more than saying it. That's having proof that it actually happened. And that is helping tremendously when you're dealing with the HIWU investigators and the arbitrators.
Going to Jay's point, the key here is that I had this rule in place and my staff understood it. That is the key.
It sounds like that's the kind of the route to go, is to have a handbook or to have signage in place. Is there anything out there? Are there any resources, any tools that horsemen and women can use to start that as a baseline for their barn area?
Yes, there are, and we have actually created a toolkit of sorts. And it's 4 or 5 forms, some signage, a policy form, and with the goal kind of giving horsemen and women a jump start or easy way to implement something. Now, there may be some changes unique to each trainer, each covered person, but this will at least get them off the ground to be able to implement a program that hopefully, in the event that a positive does occur, that they can show that they had these mitigating circumstances.
What is the best way to obtain the toolkit?
Yeah, well, we're going to make this free of charge. I mean, we get it. We work with horsemen enough. Our horsemen don't want to have to sit down and draft policies. They want to be out there with their horses. So we're going to make this as easy as possible to implement, kind of as our service to the industry so the whole industry can do better. So we'll have kind of a horseman's toolkit. We're going to help pass it out through horsemen's associations. Also, if you reach out to either of us, we'll be able to get it to you in a usable form where you can just print out a sign and put it up in your barn, print out your policy, put it up in your barn. We'll have a tip sheet, what to do if HIWU does show up with a notice. Just some really practical, easy to use stuff that we'll just make available to the industry.
We understand, we get it. You don't always have the same employee for 5 years. You may have one employee for a couple weeks and then somebody else or some staff. And we understand it's not easy to sit down with each person, but it's important. And it is a big step in the right direction. We will have these materials in both Spanish and English with the hope that it will serve the Spanish community on the backside.
So that's a great toolkit, and I think a lot of horsemen and women are thankful that you're going to provide that to them. Let's say worst case scenario, you do get some sort of a HIWU violation. What does that look like? How are they notified? And what can you expect now that you've done an arbitration? What did that process look like for the horseman or the covered person on their end?
When there's going to be a noticed issue, there's a piece of paper, a HIWU investigator will show up, deliver it to you, and then almost universally immediately conduct a barn search. Good tip here, keep your barn in order at all times. Keep your medications in your medication area. Keep things that aren't supposed to be there out, because the investigators will almost immediately go into a barn search. You'll have one investigator meet with you and start asking you questions while another team does the barn search. And that's very intentional. They don't want to give you time to hide stuff, but that's why I keep it in order at all times. Just assume anybody can show up at any time. And then when they do show up, they're going to start asking questions. You're going to need to be cooperative. You're going to need to answer factually, but don't speculate. Don't start attacking the process. Answer the questions, but then as soon as you get a chance, and you might even ask first, reach out to somebody for assistance, whether it's your attorney, your horsemen's association, because there's some early steps you want to take that are really important.
What's the first thing that, if you do get a notice of a violation from HISA or HIWU, very first thing that a horseman or horsewoman should do?
Reach out for help as soon as you can. This is a new process. It's unfamiliar to people. There are experts that can help you, whether it's your horsemen's association, HISA ombudsman, your attorney. If you don't have an attorney, find one with experience, because there are some steps you will want to take right away. You got to provide a response right away. Not that day, but within a matter of days. You might need to start taking some pictures, secure surveillance video, ask for other surveillance video. Ron Moquette's is a great example. Ron would tell you what was instrumental in helping him was getting Keeneland's surveillance video. But you need to ask for that right away, because some of that stuff, through nobody's fault, just gets deleted. So get somebody involved that's familiar with the process right away. Don't try to do it on your own.
It's a bad circumstance whenever you get that notice, but the longer you delay doing anything and taking any proactive steps, the worse position you're going to be in. Trying to get records to show that you didn't do this, the longer that spans out, the least likely you're going to be able to get those. So it's important to establish and implement a plan right when you get that notice.
This has been incredibly informative, and I think a lot of people will find this very helpful, all covered persons, but really it just helps to kind of clear up some perhaps misconceptions or preconceived notions about the process. So thank you guys for your time. Are there any parting words from the Jackson Kelly team?
I think just the main two things and the themes we've seen from all the rulings: do something now, protect yourself now, take steps in advance before you get that notice. And if you do get that notice, don't do it by yourself. Lean on others to help you through the process.
Yeah, this is a process that all of us are learning. We've spent significant time, going through these opinions, looking at the trends. The rules themselves can be hard for a non-lawyer to understand, but there are resources out there to assist you, and I hope that this toolkit assists the horsemen and women moving forward.
Well, Chris and Jay, thank you so much for your time. Jay Ingle and Chris Hoskins, specializing in equine law at Jackson Kelly in Lexington, Kentucky.
Jackson Kelly, one firm to meet your legal needs. Find an attorney at jacksonkelly.com.